Hey girls, Bethany here with a wicked awesome deal for all of our listeners. If you know me in real life, you're probably aware I don't really cook. In fact, my most famous dish in this household is likely my ramen noodles. But this year, I'm committed to changing the narrative. So, Prep Dish to the rescue. If you've never heard of Prep Dish, here's the deal. They're actually a healthy subscription-based meal planning service. So every single week when you sign up, they send you an email that has your grocery list and all of the instructions for prepping the most incredible meals for your family. I'm talking meals that are smoky paprika chicken legs with a trio of roasted vegetable or turkey and zucchini lasagna. I don't know about you, but that beats ramen noodles or chili mac any day of the week. I'm excited to enter this new adventure, and I want to invite you to join me. So here's what you do. Go to prepdish.com/heygirl and get a free 2-week trial for free. That's incredible. I hope you'll join me and let me know how it goes. Take photos of your meals, and I'll take photos of mine. And together, let's go from being the ramen noodle queen to, smoky paprika princess. Once again, go to prepdish.com/heygirl for your 2-week free trial. Hey girls, and welcome to another episode of the Hey Girl podcast. We're your hosts, Bethany Needham
and Laurie Casagrande.
And each week, we get to share with you stories from women of all ages and stages of life who are following Jesus right where they're at.
Our prayer is that each story encourages you to run your race in your place. Hey, Bethany, week after week, you keep getting amazing speakers. Lauren is such a gem. Tell the listeners a little bit about what's to come in this episode.
Okay, so here's the thing. Lauren was a pretty special pick because there are some people that we have gotten the chance to meet and know. There are some people that I haven't met yet, but I still kind of have a dream of knowing. But then Lauren literally lives on the other side of the globe.
With flying ants in her house.
Yeah, that story did creep me out a little bit. It made me a little less motivated to maybe go visit, but Lauren is phenomenal. I love talking to her, loved meeting her, and her story, there are so many things. I definitely have 2 pages of notes for her, but to give you just a taste of who she is, because I would say that she is the perfect balance of all things. In her words, and I quote, "I love Jesus and I love lipstick and fashion," which I just think is adorable. And I loved every part of this conversation. And she challenged me to things that are not necessarily always on the forefront of my mind. And I think that this is kind of a really important conversation for us to think outside. I mean, some people, this is going to be like the norm for them, but she kind of gets into this idea of how, free fashion isn't free or cheap fashion isn't cheap. And she talks about this idea of creating safe work environments for people. And she just has such a huge heart and does an incredible work. And she'll talk more about it. So I'm excited for this one.
Yes, I think it was fast fashion isn't free.
You're so good.
Lauren, you are a girl after our own hearts. And I hope that you will capture the hearts of our listeners too.
Without further ado,
here's Lauren
Pinkston. Hey girls, so excited to introduce you to now my brand new friend. We've decided we're friends now because we're both doing this interview from our bedrooms. But Lauren Pinkston is coming to you all the way from basically the other side of the world. So
exactly.
Yeah, literally. So it is like 9:30 at night here, and you are what? You must be 8. Are you 8:30 in the morning right now?
Tomorrow.
That's true. I tried to talk her into helping me with my March Madness brackets, but I guess that's not how the whole time thing works. I'm already losing. Well, Lauren, I'm just so grateful for your willingness to come on. So you were a name given to me by one of our previous guests. Miss Laurie Brown Harris, and you came highly recommended by her. And
She's too kind. I have completely fooled her. We've never actually met in person, but I'm kind of obsessed with her myself.
Me too. And that's why I've determined that anyone that Laurie Brown Harris tells me is I should interview, I'm going to go after them because I love Laurie that much. So
it's the ultimate honor. The ultimate honor.
Well, Lauren, I have done a little bit of, I guess, Instagram stalking. That's how you get to know people these days.
Of course. It's 2018. We have to use our resources.
Exactly. So I've done a little bit of Instagram stalking, but I've intentionally left a lot of your story dark for myself because I love the chance to have first-time conversations with people and kind of hear it fresh. And so I thought maybe we could just start and you could take some time and kind of unpack your story for our listeners, let them know a little about yourself.
Okay. I love to tell people that I sound like a pathological liar when I introduce myself because my story is so wild and in some ways. And in some ways I feel like I'm just so incredibly boring. So I'll try to liven it up in some areas. No, I'm just kidding. I'm a Southern girl from the U.S. So I grew up in Tennessee and grew up in a very conservative Christian home. And I'm the oldest of 4 kids. So that leadership quality started to be built in me, I think, and just raising helping raise my siblings. I was 10 when my youngest sibling was born. So I remember having my youngest brother and sister in Walmart because that's where all good Southerners shop for everything. I guess I was 13 at the time and someone came up to me and was like, "Your kids are so cute." And I was like, good, I'm 13. And that was kind of the joke that we always had with my siblings, was half mom, half older sister, but just a really tight-knit family, and really thankful for the foundation that my parents laid, and there being like a zero tolerance policy for missing church or for missing church events or for being involved in what was going on. And I'm really thankful for that foundation that was laid. I told my dad when I was 12 that I was going to be a missionary. And he was like, "Okay, that's fine, as long as you live down the road from me and do that." But I don't know. I think from the time that I was a child, just watching National Geographic on TV, seeing what was going on in the Horn of Africa, watching people, even in my own community, trying to do life without all of the resources that I was given. There was this sense of injustice in that. And I think for a long time I was motivated by guilt to try and fix societal issues or address or be someone who was salt and light in the community. And so probably the first times I started traveling abroad to Haiti and to places in, we were in Aruba. That's a really rough place to have a mission trip, but
people in Aruba need Jesus too.
They do. They absolutely do. And it's beautiful to have the background of the ocean and being able to share that good news. We had, trips to Peru or to different places in Africa, whatever it is. I think I was motivated by guilt for a long time, that I was this well-off person and that wasn't fair. So how could I address that injustice through my upper middle class white perspective? And so thankfully I have a great therapist. She helped me work through some of that guilt, that guilt motivation and unplaced, or how should we say it? Unnecessary guilt that I was putting on myself, not that God was putting on me. And we spent some time talking about David, King David, and the kind of privilege that he had, as a king, as an attractive man, as someone who was chosen specifically by God. And she said to me, I'll never forget this, she said, God can use people in any walk of life, and sometimes he puts people in very privileged places to be able to serve and be his sounding voice, his hands and feet in that way. And it was just like a whole load was lifted off of my shoulders. Really, I think, changed the trajectory of cross-cultural work for me. my husband and I met in university. We were at Bible college, and that's a hilarious story that if we have time, I'll let you know how to find a good man and how to chase him down. And I totally chased this guy. He was a senior, I was a freshman, and I totally chased him down. I was dating another guy at the time, actually, and Gavin didn't even know that I existed. And I heard him pray at a campus Devo, and I was like, what am I doing? Like, that's the guy that I need to be with. So I went over to my boyfriend's apartment, and I broke up with him that night. And I think it kind of threw him off, but anyways, I got to be really good friends with my husband's roommate, joined his prayer group. 4 years later, we were married. So I had to do a little bit of hard work, a little manipulation, but it worked out well. And honestly, we've been married almost 9 years, and it is such a gift to be led by that man. It's been really fun to be married to him. So Gavin is his name, and he's just a gift to me and to my kids.
You should write a book about that. How to chase your man and
in Bible school, this is how to get the man that you're looking for. Oh, he hates it when I tell the story. He says it gets more dramatic every time, but he's just really humble. But yeah, he went to medical school after we graduated from university, and so he had a degree in missions as well. And so his goal was to be able to do medical mission work abroad. I was studying education at the time, and graduated. We got married, and we were planning to move to Southeast Asia. So does the 1040 window ring a bell to you?
Yes.
It's a common phrase right now. It's one that we all understand. So we were trying to focus wherever we were going to plant ourselves to be within this window where 99% of the world's unreached people live and 1% of the world's missionaries go. And so that was the plan. We planned for about 8 years to land here. We had a lot of schooling to finish. Gavin had to finish medical residency. We were planning with a team. We did a couple of survey trips over, and we landed on a country here in Southeast Asia that I can't say online just to protect the people that we work with. But we decided on this country because it is closed to the kind of work that we do. And so we have to be a bit creative in how we live our lives here. But honestly, because of the creative access that is the culture of this country, I think that's been another process item for me in my life of figuring out how to be a follower of Christ and to do this. I mean, we uphold missions and missionaries like at a next level. You know what I mean? Like when the missionary comes home, it's like, oh, you've made the ultimate sacrifice. You are serving God at the highest level. And it creates this really unhealthy paradigm in the mind of the church and in the mind of the missionary. I really, at this point in my life, have like shucked that title and that mantle. Like I don't call myself a missionary anymore, and I guess our church that's supporting us still does. But anytime that someone addresses me as that, I try so hard to take that title and put it in a box, because I am just a person, and I read the same Bible that you do and that everyone else does, and we're all called to the same kind of work. Living in this country, I am working and I am doing life alongside people who are living here. And that is my calling, to do a good job at the real work that I do. And there are so many expressions of faith and discipleship that flow out of the workplace that it's really defined for me what God has asked us to do when he says, be my people, be salt and light, go out into all the world. As you're going into the world, you carry my name and you have my spirit in you, and I'm going to be there. You're not by yourself, but you don't have to make things happen. We are not responsible for people's souls, and we are not responsible for that conversion process. If God is a God of mission, and we believe that he is, then God is doing that hard work. And how do we provoke that work to just be that much greater? My husband and I have been here for 4 years, definitely the most challenging 4 years of my life, but the most fruitful as well. If we're freeing ourselves up to believe that God is doing just as much work in us as he's doing through us, and that the work that he's doing in us is just as fruitful as the work that he's doing through us, wow, I am so thankful. If he had to bring me all the way here to teach me the lessons that he's taught me about being a disciple of his and truly being a woman of his, I am so thankful that that's the experience that he's given me, because if there's anything I've learned in living abroad and trying to share my faith in a culture that absolutely opposes it, it is that there's no question, there is absolutely no question that the God that we serve is exactly who he says that he is. And if he's exactly who he says he is, then why are we wasting our time telling people about him? Oh goodness, so many stories that could flow out of this time, but I'm thankful to be sitting, in this house in the middle of this country, it's a country most people haven't even heard of. So I'm totally off the map. And I think in a lot of ways, being removed from even the Christian woman culture in the U.S. has freed me in some ways and challenged me in others.
So one of the things that I noted as I was kind of glancing at your social media is this work that you do with Wearthy for Wear, obviously a big part of your heart in the work that you do there. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Okay, so the real story is that I love Jesus and I love lipstick and fashion, and I don't know how those go together all the time. And so I remember when we were moving to work with our sending church in Tennessee before we launched overseas, I told my husband, I was like, I don't look like a missionary. They're not going to accept me. This is a very conservative church. I was like, they're not going to accept me. My earrings are too big. I don't know. So they totally did, and they were so welcoming and warm to us. But there was a time in my life when guilt was my motivator, right? That I thought, well, I should, if I was a real godly woman, then I would be more I would look more humble on the outside. I probably wouldn't wear high heels, and I would look like, if I go and be a missionary, maybe I'll look like a missionary, and then I will be closer to God. And dadgummit, I moved over here, and this culture is all about saving face, and how you look on the outside is directly equivalent to how important what you say is. So if I looked like modest, and I mean, not modest in like covering up, but like modest in like, oh, poor, then people they would not listen to a word that I say. It doesn't matter how many degrees I have. I don't know. I brought like t-shirts and, skirts over here. And wow, I quickly realized that there's everyone here takes a lot of pride in how they look. So that prayer wasn't answered by God. And so my love for clothing and for fashion and for makeup or whatever, like it's who I am, and I'm learning that I can love Jesus and love those things too. So that's the background. But it's been a journey of seeing how much business drives safe work for people, and how much a safe workplace, a good workplace, and having a good employer really changes everything in a person's life, because they're spending the majority of their day at work. And so if their workplace is good, healthy, a positive environment for them, that makes them better wives, better husbands, better mothers, better fathers, better daughters, better sons. And so the entire family really is influenced by the quality of the workplace. And so seeing business as a way to really reach people and gift them with that positive environment for the greatest chunk of their day has become something that's so important to me. And there are things that I think God is going to do where we are, and prayers that I'm praying for him to provide even more opportunities for me and my family to provide that safe place for people. But in the meantime, my sister, who is also a businesswoman, she and I were reading through articles and reading books about fast fashion and what that means. And we all of a sudden were just really uncomfortable with the amount of clothes that we were buying, knowing that they were made using slave labor or really unfair wages. A lot of this movement came after the Rana workplace fell. I think that was 2011, in April 2011, and or 2012. I need to look it up. It's the anniversary is coming up in a few weeks. Anyway, so the conversation around fast fashion really launched after that, and people saw over 1,000 garment factory workers were trapped in a building that collapsed because the the companies were not paying enough for these workers to create the clothes that they were demanding, and the people who were in charge of the factories weren't taking care of the structural needs for that building. So thankfully, a lot of research has come out about this since then. So many good books, so many good articles. And my sister and I decided, look, if we're gonna enjoy fashion, we want to enjoy it from the most ethical standpoint possible. There's a lot of things going on in Europe and Australia, but the U.S. there weren't many companies that were providing clothes and shoes and handbags that people could really feel good about wearing. And so a year and a half ago, we launched Wearthy, whose tagline is Worthy for Wear. And Wearthy is an online boutique where we have really vetted companies who are doing the best that they can to take care of their employees. We've asked some really hard questions. There are a lot of companies that claim to be fair trade or claim to be doing the best for their employees. But if they couldn't answer some of the questions that we were asking, then we did not carry their lines. And so I really feel like we can fully stand behind all of the brands that we've chosen, and we've created an online space for people to purchase items that really honor the people who made them.
I love that. I love too how you kind of took that, that you loved fashion and all the things, and the line about my earrings are too big to be a missionary is fantastic. But then to even take that forward into, let's look at what's actually going on behind these companies, and then that tie-in for, like, you're right, where people work, that's a tremendous amount of time that they spend in their day. And I think someone who lives in the U.S., and I live just outside of Boston, Massachusetts, and it's easy to not think about where these things come from, whether it's the clothes we wear, the shoes. I mean, we don't even like to think about where our food comes from. We just want it fast and convenient, and I think it's it's an awesome thing, but it's also really good to be able to share this on Hey Girl for all of us to stop and remember that sometimes this fight for convenience, for things of that, it's costing somebody somewhere, because to everything there's a process and there's a cost to things. And I feel like we're starting to get a sense of that by all these kind of scam companies that come up, and we're like, okay, now this is seeming too good to be true. Like, there's no way that item of clothing is, whatever amount. But to actually stop and think, no, there are human beings on the other side of some of these things that are really being mistreated.
Absolutely. Lucy Seigle is an activist and a big voice in this movement, but I love what she says, and I've got it in my email signature because I love it so much, but she says, fast fashion isn't free. Someone somewhere is paying. And so we have to ask ourselves, I really think that most people don't understand how retail works. And so when you go into if you go into a store, the price that you see on that shirt, if you divide that in half, that is what the company paid for that shirt. Okay. So if you see a $5 shirt in the store, and that's the full price, I'm thinking like bottom dollar. Okay. But if you see a $5 shirt in the store, divide that in half. So the store, the wholesaler was selling that shirt for $2.50 to the retailer. So the cost of the shirt for $2.50 has to cover the cost of the cotton that was grown, the dye that went to the shirt, the seamstress who cut the shirt, sewed the shirt, the cost of the electricity at the factory where it was made, and all of the the shipping and tax and export. So all of those things have to fit into $2.50. So do we really think that the people who are making these things are getting treated fairly? It was a good question to ask ourselves, and I'm in the process of completely redoing my wardrobe, and it is a slow process. So if anyone's listening and they're like, oh, I feel terrible, all of my shirts come from fast fashion big box stores, like, okay, I was so there 5 years ago, and I'm still there at times, and sometimes we have to have a certain outfit or a certain dress for a certain event. And so I am not a teetotaler because I can't live in that world. And so if anyone's listening and they start to feel bad about their consumption habits, I just want to encourage everyone that this journey to asking hard questions and creating an ethical wardrobe takes time, and it takes money, and it takes an investment. And so I'm in the process of working with a seamstress here to actually make all of the clothes that I wear on a day-to-day basis, and I'm moving out all of the clothes that I have. But that takes so much time and energy, and not everybody wants to do that, and I don't expect everybody to do that. I'm just here like trying to figure out what all of this means. Yeah, I don't want anyone to feel terrible about themselves, just to be aware and to start asking those hard questions. And I'm happy to sell you anything off of Wearthy's website if you don't want to do the work yourself.
Well, I love, because one of our taglines on Hey Girl is encouraging women to run their race in their place. Mm-hmm. And I just love you sharing that this is something that God has put on your heart for a very long time, and that you're embracing it in a way that you're willing to not just ask hard questions, but to take hard steps. And like you said, it's not easy to take that extra step to, okay, where did this really come from? Or hire a seamstress to do all of this work. Like, that's hard work. You could have very easily had this on your heart and been like, yeah, that's way too involved. Forget it. Like, I'm going to find something else to be passionate about, and just kind of pushed it off to the side. But instead, you've just really stepped into it, and it's become, I mean, just a little bit that I've seen of your Instagram and the work that you're doing, and just seeing how God is moving through that. And I know that the title missionary is not necessarily what you hold, but just the reality that God is working in and through you, not just where you're at, but thanks to the world of Instagram, where the whole world really can look in, it's spreading beyond that. I just think it's awesome.
Thank you. Thanks. That is the blessing of Instagram. There are plenty of curses, but that's definitely the blessing of Instagram, to be inspired by other women who are, I don't know, I've found it difficult at times, and found myself scrolling through other people's lives, comparing what I was doing. We have all done that, right? It's just not a new conversation, but I have had to take really intentional steps to weed out the people that I'm following, that I'm going to compare myself to, like people who have really beautiful homes. I'm like, there is no, like, I cannot accomplish that in this house that I'm renting, and I can't accomplish that in a culture where everything is gaudy, and I can't accomplish it. And so I've had to, and I love that women can do that. But for me, and my weakness, and where my sin comes out, is in comparing myself to other women. And then when we compare ourselves to other women, we start to think negatively about them and judge them in ways that are so unfair. And those women are running their race too. But for my personal Instagram feed, to really find women who inspire me to be focused on things that have an eternal perspective has been really key.
Oh, yeah. I feel like only recently I've almost given myself permission to filter my own Instagram in a way that's like, it's okay for me to decide, because you think about it, and obviously you don't want to look at stuff that is flat out like, this is sinful to look at. But then it really goes beyond that. Like, Lord, I don't want things in front of my eyes that are stirring that, whether it be pride or whether it be comparison. And like you said, it could be that for whatever reason, this is making me have negative thoughts towards this person. Like, I don't remember what it was that was a breaking point for me, where I was like, I don't have to look at this. Like, I'm literally, it's like I'm sitting there acting like I'm being attacked by my own Instagram feed. For me, it's become a really common thing to be like, all right, I need to unfollow this, because even if there's not something wrong with what the person's posting, but what's wrong is what's going on in my own heart. But what you said, for me, I love finding those people who are really doing things, who inspire me, like, oh gosh, they're just running their race, and I love that, and I love seeing what God's doing. A combination of that and like cute puppies and babies, to me, is like
absolutely
the ideal Instagram feed.
That's so good.
Oh, so tell me a little bit about what is just a day in a life of living in Southeast Asia, and, as you said, kind of off the map in a country most people have never heard of. What does it look like for you?
Oh, well, let me just put down any of the glamorized images that you might have. It was a thunderstorm, and these flying ants came out. And my husband walked upstairs to put our baby in the bed, and I am serious. There were hundreds, dare I say thousands, of these guys flying all over our upstairs, all around. He turned on the lights, and I heard him say, "Lauren, you need to come upstairs." And so we're trying to figure out how to get all of these things trapped into the bathroom. So we turn off all the lights in the house, only turn on the lights in the bathroom. And then he runs, once we've gotten like 80% of these things, these flying ants, into the bathroom with the light on, then he runs in, shuts the door behind him, and then opens the window to the outside, hoping that they will fly towards the light outside on the street, and praying that the electricity doesn't go off. And then we go into our daughter's room to put them down, thinking, okay, we got most of these things out. And dadgummit, if there were not hundreds of termites crawling from outside of their windowsill. And we have had termites. We've had the guys come and spray 3 times for termites in the last year already. And I thought, this house is going to fall down around us. So that's pretty typical. We're not in the middle of the bush. We're not in the middle of the jungle. We're in a capital city. We pay $1,000 rent on this house.
Wow.
Yeah, we all share all of our money situations here. I realize that's not something you share in the U.S., but the UN has a very large presence here, and so that has upped the price of real estate just exorbitantly. And so housing rent is so expensive, and we are not allowed to own a house. So that's a big chunk of our budget.
Because you're from the U.S., you're not allowed to own a house?
Right.
Okay.
Only nationals can own property.
Wow.
And so... yeah, so that makes it fun. Yeah, sometimes it looks like dealing with things like that, trying to figure out, the first 2 years, I was just trying to figure out where to find cheese in town.
That's like survival right there.
Sometimes you just really want a burrito, and you have to figure out how to make it from scratch yourself. So I do go to work, and I have 3 kids. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old daughter who go to school at an international school that takes great care of them, and that's a really good environment for them. And then I have a little baby boy who's turning a year old soon. And so some days he's going to work with me. Some days I'm working from home with him. Some days we have help, with people taking care of him. But, trying to figure out how to be a working mom in a culture that is different from the one that I came from, there's a lot of challenges that come with that, but really enjoying working and doing life alongside the people that we are working with, and just consulting on business or marketing things, consulting on, policies or storytelling pieces. A big part of my job is telling the story of what we're doing ethically. And so just training people in the storytelling, that pieces that we have, how do we honor and really uphold the people that we're working alongside the best that we can. That's a big part of what I do every day. And sometimes it looks like creating a communications piece online, and sometimes it looks like measuring for a diaper changing station at a cafe where I do a little bit of consulting. So it just depends. It's so hard to say. So hard to say.
And your 3 kids, you have walked through, at least one of your 3 is adopted, correct?
That's right. So we moved over with one biological child. She was 9 months old at the time. So my first child was born in America. And then my second child was actually born before my first child in Uganda. So we adopted out of birth order. Eliza's 4 and Hope is 7. And she was born in Uganda. We adopted her just before she turned 6. And so we walked that journey. We were in Uganda for 4 months, and then in the U.S. for 5 months, finalizing all of her paperwork. It was a 4-year process from start to finish, the adoption process. So wow. That was a long journey that, we just continue to walk out. And Oh goodness, I could do a whole nother podcast on being an adoptive mom. Oh, it's just it is an honor to watch God do work in her, even at such a young age, and to see God healing wounds that come from trauma, come from not having, it is such a privilege to have your birth mom and your birth dad raise you. And so knowing that I have one child who doesn't have that privilege, walking through that trauma with her, giving her the space to grieve that, giving her the hope that we're never going to abandon her. But that trust takes time. And it's been almost 2 years to the date of this recording that she's been in our family. And to see who she is now and to see the work that God has done in her and healing her heart is absolutely incredible. And to have a front seat to that is just the greatest joy of my life. She really brings so much to our family. She's a ball of fun. And today they had character day at school, and so she dressed up like Fancy Nancy. She was all decked out. She had all of her sequins. She had her lipstick. She was all decked out. She is so fun. And then our son was born in Thailand, and so I have 3 kids, and they were all born on different continents, and I can't believe that is my life story. This is my plug for any women listening. If you get pregnant and you need to have a baby, come to Thailand and have the baby, because the hospital is amazing. The hospital's incredible. The doctor was so nice, and they're so encouraging. They're like, "Oh, mommy, you're so beautiful. Oh, mommy, you're so strong. Oh, mommy, you're so good." And I was like, "Oh, I never want to leave." Like, best experience.
So were you living in Thailand at the time then?
No.
You just swung by to birth a baby because you heard the hospitals were great.
It was the year of the ultimate transition. So within the course of 1 year, we moved to Uganda, lived there for 4 months. We moved back to the States, had to secure income and work and housing for 5 months while we finished the adoption process there. Then we moved back to the country where we are here. We had 3 months here before listen, we all know how babies were born, but apparently I forgot. This baby was not planned, but he is the greatest gift. The best mistake. But anyways, I was about 5 months pregnant when we came back here. So we had 2 or 3 months here before we had to move to Thailand and hang out there for 2 months to wait for his arrival, and then go back to the U.S. Embassy, get all of his paperwork, prove that we were his parents, that he was a U.S. citizen, apply for his passport to be able to come back home.
Crazy.
It's a year that I would love to remember to forget.
But he's going to have that story his whole life, which is pretty epic.
Yeah. He is a ball of fun. He is cute.
Oh, well, I love the shout out for Thailand birthing hospitals. I'm sure they'll appreciate.
But listen, I had such a hard time when do we talk about birth on here and like 2nd degree, 3rd degree tears and during the birthing process? You can edit this out if it's not appropriate, but I have big babies. My babies are like 10 pounds. And so the healing process from my first delivery was so long and hard. And this time in Thailand, they bring in this infrared light. And they stick it between my legs under the sheets. And they said, "Mommy, this is for healing. This is going to be good for your tissues." And I was like, what is happening right now? I've got this red light shining on all of my lady parts underneath this sheet. And I could not figure out what was happening. And I tell you what, I had the quickest recovery after this baby was born. It was amazing. I felt incredible. And maybe that's just the second child. I don't know. But my second plug for Thailand hospitals and for the infrared light. So
I think there's something to that light.
It was great.
You can have a bunch of women who are due with babies bringing the infrared lights into the hospital, shining them under the sheets.
Y'all can send me an email, and I'll send you an academic article that I found on it. So we need to be doing that in the States.
I love it. Oh, well, this is going to be a terrible transition, but I have to ask the question. In this season right now, you've got 3 kids, you're working, doing all the things, chasing bugs out of your house at night. What does it actually look like for you just in your own faith journey? Like to just continue your relationship with Jesus, to grow closer to him as, obviously living completely across the world from where you were born, but to this place that really God's called you and obviously given you a heart for.
I don't know how you do it with little kids at home. So for everyone who's listening, I would like to ask you to send me a personal message, find me on Instagram. I don't know, find me somehow and tell me how to have quality time in the Word when you have little kids at home, because it is a constant challenge. It's a constant challenge. And I have asked every woman in my network here, because there are women who are so in the Word and they're so close with God, and they're getting up at 5:30 to have 2 hours of prayer before they start their day. And I'm like, how are you doing this? And they were like, I could not do this until my kids were in high school. And that has just really been such just an flowing of grace over my head, just such an anointing of freedom, that my time with God looks like wherever I can grab it. And I am just clinging to it and holding on to it wherever I can. And that means that in the car, we only have worship music, because I'm in the car and I'm in the car on a regular basis. And how do I drown out all the other noise? And it means that my kids really love Need to Breathe and Hillsong, and that's, I'm all for kids music, but I need that time, and that's a boundary that I've set in my motherhood to say, like, we're all in this car together. We're gonna I have to have that, like, that constant Word surrounding me. And giving myself a break on my prayer life as well. In my prayers, what I would like to have is a full hour where I can get comfortable with God and spend that time really adoring who He is and confessing my sins and being so thankful and walking through this process of prayer, that I know is so good. And to find an hour, and I can't even find an hour to shower and shave my legs. And so, it's just so hard just to be able to give myself a break and say, I'm going to keep these prayer whispers going all day long. But God, this is what's on my heart today. I need you to come and provide clarity in the situation. There's this conflict that's going on in my life. I need you to give me creative solutions to fixing it. God, I just want to spend time thanking you for this amazing transformation that I'm seeing in this person, and being okay with that being a 5 to 15 minute time instead of an hour long time. I can't wait for the time in my life where I can have that time. That's not where I am right now, and I'm just now getting to the point where I'm not beating myself up over it.
It sounds like that kind of theme from early when you're talking about having that great counselor that came alongside of you and kind of releasing that guilt that isn't from God. And right. I think that's a good word for young moms, especially. And I'm kind of in this, not quite too, well, I guess I do have one going into high school in the fall, but I'm at that next, my kids are a little bigger now and it looks different, but man, does my heart just beat for young moms and just remembering that season of, knowing morning from evening and days blurring together and just getting from one thing to the next. And I love your worship music on in the car and just talking to God throughout the day. I think those are huge. And knowing that ultimately, kind of what you said earlier, it's not just about what God wants to do through you, but the work He's doing in you. And that work happens in those moments. It doesn't always have to be these big, epic, hour-long prayer services. It's kind of that ongoing connecting with God. I love it. So I have one more question for you if you're up for it. And I'm kind of excited to hear it because just a little bit you've talked about, I want to know where it goes. But Lauren, what would you say is the most superficial thing about you?
And this is where the mask comes off and where we all share the pieces of us that are so human. They're so human. I am obsessed with celebrities.
Really?
It is just fascinating to me. I love studying people. People are just incredibly fascinating. But when I was in the States, if I could just grab a People magazine or, I don't know, an entertainment mag, I don't know. I would just flip through. I just loved, and I love to stalk people online and be like, what is it that drives you to do this? And exactly how are you, how are you standing when you took that that picture? And how did you actually ask that person to take that selfie of you? And then how do you feel so confident in that dress? And then how in the world are you finding time for yourself when you're having to do this job in the public in front of everyone? And I find it so fascinating. And I can't get my hands on those kinds of magazines here. So sometimes I just go down pop culture trails or find myself on Instagram, and I'm like, how did I get here? I'm having to like swipe back like 8 times to even figure out how I even got down that trail.
That's awesome. That was a friend of mine. We had a conversation like this where she was talking about how she was really into watching Sister Wives, and she's like, why would this interest me? And I was like, I think it's just a curiosity of a life that you don't live, like something that's kind of this, okay, what is it like to be in your shoes? Like how do you do it? And like, yeah.
And how do you actually walk in those shoes? I don't know. Like I'm just like the literal shoes. Like sometimes I'm looking and I'm like, how did you walk down the carpet in that dress? Yeah. And is the dress stuck to your chest? Like, how much sticky tape is on there? And who got you ready? And I remember when Oprah was getting ready for, was it the Golden Globes where she got the award recently? And just the behind the scenes. Okay, so I find myself looking at pictures of her from 4 years ago, connecting the dots of her hairstylist. And I'm like, oh, you have the exact same person that does your hair and makeup every time. And I'm just like, how did I get into Oprah's Life 2014? I don't know. It's really sad.
I love it. I love whenever I ask this question and a brand new thing comes up. So this is, mark it down, our first celebrity stalker. I think it's wonderful. Well, Lauren, just thank you so much for being willing to come on, again, sharing your story. And I'm just excited to continue to follow your journey and see the work. I'm definitely going to go on your website and check out the clothing and all. I mean, any excuse to shop, right? So
absolutely.
But yeah, and we will definitely link all of these things in our show notes when your episode comes out. So if people are interested in learning more, what is the best way for people to reach out to you if they want to connect with you or maybe have more questions about the work that you're doing?
I would say email, but I'm a really bad email neglector. So Instagram is probably where I spend most of my time on my phone. If it's somebody from the States that's connecting with me for the first time, it's just easy to find, and I'm checking that pretty regularly. So,
well then, listeners, you know how to connect with her. Lauren, thank you so much for this conversation. It was such a gift.
Thank you so much.
Okay, girls. So now you know Lauren. And Laurie, now you know Lauren. And
we both have L names.
Yeah, for real. Do you think her name is Lauren or Lauren?
Let's save the listeners from this conversation on how to pronounce names correctly.
I've been butchering names my whole life. Oh, this is so embarrassing. Yeah, I feel like I even maybe undersold her in the intro because everything that we covered, I feel like I learned so much. Honestly, from learning about the fashion stuff we talked about to giving birth to her baby in Thailand and all the perks that come along with that, which I'm not going to lie. I was speaking with my husband and he's like, it's good. We gave props because Thailand doesn't always have the best reputation for things. And
healthcare of all things, too.
And now we've given them a little shout out for a good job, Thailand, with your fancy infrared lights and for the mommies who gave birth. But beyond that, she had a line when we were talking that I have been quoting, requoting, like it's just not left my head, which is this idea of the work that God is doing in us is just as important as the work that he does through us. And that has been so personally impactful for me in this season to be reminded that right now, even though I might feel like I'm doing less, put it in quotations, like ministry or upfront stuff or whatever it is, that the work that he's doing in me in this season of less or quieter or whatever it is just as important as all of the work he's ever done when I'm leading missions trips or serving homeless or whatever, like that there isn't one is better than the other. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And she said that we're not responsible for other souls. And so I think that kind of plays off. So the goal of a mission is to get those souls, to tell people about the gospel. And the fact that she's saying she's going to put in her best effort, but through that, God's going to change who she is. That burden of saving those souls, although we always want to put checks on the list and say, oh, here's all the people that I've spoken to, and how we define success, especially here in the U.S., is, getting things done, and to be reminded that it's not about the output. That's on God's shoulders, and it doesn't have to be our burden. And what's more important is what he's doing through that process. It's not the destination, it's the process.
I think it's 1 Corinthians that has a passage that talks about that idea of it. It's talking about Paul and Apollos, but how Apollos planted seeds and Paul watered, whichever. But basically the idea is in all of our lives, like some of us plant seeds, some of us water. But in that passage, it's very clear, but it's God who brings the harvest. Like, we may have different parts in the process, but ultimately, like when it comes to salvation and people being drawn to God, that's the work of his Holy Spirit. Like, that's not on us. And sometimes I feel like we want the credit for it, but most times if we really think about it, like, I don't want that kind of responsibility.
Right.
That's terrifying. Like, oh, your entire eternal whatever is on me? No, thank you.
No.
But we do get to play a part. I love that part. Like, God didn't necessarily need us to get his work done, but he invites us to be a part of what he's doing. And I just think that's such a cool aspect to who God is, and the fact that he's created us not just as like little robots for him or whatever, but he's purposed us and he's given us this call on our life to know him, but also gives us the chance to serve him and do these things for him. And Lauren is such a great example of how there are things that are like go and be a missionary. And she talked about that idea of, I don't want the title missionary.
I was so surprised. Yes, I didn't realize that.
Yeah, I love that. I don't know, to me, like what that says in her heart as far as, and to me, it gives a glimpse into the reality of mission work. Like whether you're here or on the other side of the world, like we're all doing the same work, and our call should be the exact same, which is to know God and to make him known, like to tell others about him. And
yeah, that part spoke to me a lot. So whether you're in ministry, whether you're on mission, whether you're in business, she talked about the worthy for wear, that at the end of the day, we're all trying to bring glory to God. And I just found it so interesting that she had dove deep into the retail industry and felt compelled to kind of bring this to light. And I wonder, for our listeners, what type of business that you're in. Are you, being a reflection of Jesus and God in that? Are you, uncovering kind of the best of your work and trying to improve things? Or are you just going for a paycheck and going in and out? You talk about it, at your gym job, wanting to do the best job that you can do while you're there for the few hours. And I think about even Jesus, being a carpenter, and what did that look like? Did he just come and slap something together, or did he, go and look for each piece of wood and really put care and love into it? And how can we reflect that in our own careers?
Oh yeah, I love her. She talked about make the most of where you are, do what you can where you can. And then I love, if you don't know your thing, ask God, what's your thing? I just love the simplicity of that. Like for her, she obviously had this love of fashion. She's done a really good job of tying all these things into what she does. But I do think sometimes we find ourselves in this place of, okay, but I don't know what my thing is.
Or sometimes I have too many things and I'm like, which direction? And so you can't just stand there and not make any decisions. You just have to go with it. If it doesn't feel right, try the next thing.
It's true. And that the idea of just going before God, and it should be obvious, but I think sometimes it feels too, I don't know, I hate to say dumb, but sometimes I feel dumb going to God and being like, could you just maybe show me?
Yes.
Like, I feel like somehow I'm supposed to be this independent grown-up child when really God's like, I love when you come to me and that this is a journey together. And I love to show you things and reveal things to you. Like, versus that image of God that I get sometimes that it's almost like he's trying to create one of those escape rooms with all these puzzles that like, well, if you figure it out, then maybe you'll walk in my will. But
I know.
Timer's on.
And we want to be like insightful in our prayers and like, I want to incorporate some scripture and say something really articulate. And then there's days where you're just like, dear God, please help me to be in a better mood. And that's fine. Yeah. It doesn't have to be this long list.
I legitimately had one of these days recently where, just wrestling, not really wrestling with God, more wrestling internally. Like, am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, is this...
We all have those days.
Yeah. And I was so I write a lot when I pray because it helps me keep my focus. And I wrote in my journal just that question, God, am I doing what you want me to do? And am I where you want me to be right now? And they're just kind of like, I guess, simple questions, and this may seem like dumb to everyone else, but God just knows how to speak to your heart. And I went to work that morning and I went to unlock the door, something I do every single morning that I'm there. But I joke with my daughter all the time that when I unlock the doors, I basically just try and not get like stampeded by all of the gym people because that morning crowd, they're on a mission. They got places to go, people to see. And that morning, it was the smallest thing that just I knew. In the moment it happened, I was like, this is so God from my prayer this morning. But one of the members that's there every single morning, that morning when I unlocked the doors, stopped and looked at me and was like, good morning, Bethany. And just like this connection of, I've been there since the 1st of January, but this is the first time that they've ever like not trampled me on the stairs and just said, and it was just a moment of like, okay, like, these little things do matter. And I felt like it was definitely God. And that's what I love about Lauren's story is this, wherever you are, whatever it is, just like when you put that in God's hands, when you do it, like you said, for his glory, God can take the most mundane, almost like what could be like wasted time and use it for him. And for me this week, I needed that reminder. And I wonder for our listeners, how many of them, because most of life, I feel like, is mundane. Mm-hmm. Most of what we do. And so what would it look like to put our mundane before God and say, God, even in this, show me, how do I glorify you? And some of that is just giving it our best when we do it. Some of it is just being faithful to keep doing it, even if it feels like, this is not going anywhere. But God's like, no, this is exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So
I would challenge our listeners, to be a good steward and to think about what you're passionate about that you haven't intersected with your faith. So is it that lipstick and fashion that you're like, well, that doesn't have anything to do with God? It's like, well, maybe it could. So what is that topic for you and how could it intersect and what does that look like? For me, from my interview, I found kind of that passion in food and looking into what we eat and how that fuels our bodies and how we can, have a more sustainable food system and earth and health all from food. So I would challenge our listeners to that.
I love it. All right, listeners, you got your challenge. So take some time, think about it. And again, if you're like, I have no idea, then ask God, what's my thing?
Yeah.
What is something? And I remember someone telling me once, if you wonder what you're passionate about, what are the things that when you start talking about them, you have no problem, like, carrying on conversation? Like, you get excited when you talk about it, or you don't run out of things to say about it, or you just find it's the thing that comes up in conversation a lot. Sometimes it's not the whole answer, but it's a good hint and indicator of what's really going on in your heart. And just like Laurie said, take that and be like, okay, God, how can I use this for your glory? Like, what does that look like in my life? Thanks again for listening.
Yes, we appreciate your time.
We kind of like you all. So thanks for listening. Thanks for tuning in. We did remember to pray, so we can legitimately say, y'all,
We're praying for you.
we're praying for you. We love you. Have a great week and keep running your race in your place.
Amen. Bethany. No.
Yeah.
Let's go in the bloopers. I never get it to the bloopers because I always turn it off before it gets there.
I feel like he doesn't do bloopers anymore.
Yeah.
Rude.
Why aren't you doing bloopers, Andy? Okay.
We need to pay our producer more.
Maybe in chocolate or something?
He doesn't really love chocolate. I feel like craft beer might motivate him. He's going to cut that.
I forgot we were recording. I would have said anything.